Here we go again. Have to make my entrance. Okay. 2 days ago, I posted a video. It was the Dark Night of the Soul video for conservatives like myself. Vice President Harris is advocating a lot of things I disagree with that conservatives disagree with. Mr. Trump is opposed to those things. Tends to make you want to vote for Trump. However, I said at the end of that video that my mind was still in doubt. Since then, especially this morning, reading the news, my mind is made up. I said in the earlier video, Trump betrays Reagan, make Putin lose, to discredit dictatorship. And here's my conclusion today. Vote Harris to keep America great. And I really mean it. It's true. Now, what was the big news that helped decide me? Here's a story posted this morning. It's out of the Guardian newspaper from Britain. And it's on this precise issue that I am so concerned about. And I had been hoping in the last 2 days that if a word of my video got out, or if Mr. Trump finally gained some character and morality, he might back away and change his policy on Ukraine. I researched today, this morning, had he done anything new on Ukraine? I didn't find any evidence that he had, and I did find this story in the Guardian of Britain, Friday, 1st November, that's today, 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, that's our time. And here it points out, while Trump has been vague about the shape of a potential agreement, his running mate, J.D. Vance, has laid out a plan that critics describe as tantamount to a Russian victory, with Moscow keeping de facto control over Ukrainian territory it occupies now, and Ukraine left out of NATO. And it says over here, a security official in Kiev, so this is a Ukrainian government official, he has a bias, and he says the Chinese, the Indians, and of course the Russians see this as America's war. The U.S. already had a huge catastrophe with the withdrawal from Afghanistan due to Biden and Harris. Big mistake. But we've suffered that one already. Then they say, if they, the Americans, lost Ukraine, they will lose all military credibility. And this is coming from a biased source, but you know what? It's accurate. It most definitely is accurate. That is what will happen. And, Mr. Trump is a sheep in wolf's clothing. Now, I meant in the last video to get into this, the Trump platform, but I was getting up on the 30-minute mark, figured I better close it out. So let's do it now. Make America Great platform. It doesn't do that, it does the opposite. Now, first, says chapter 10, return to peace through strength. Where's the application of strength? He says, keeping the American people safe requires countering China. But he doesn't say countering Russia. He omits countering Russia. Then he says strengthen alliances. Republicans will strengthen alliances by, number one, ensuring that our allies must meet their obligations to invest. Now that means they should pay more money to build up their own militaries. So America will strengthen its alliances by criticizing our allies and saying, you should pay more. Well, I don't think that strengthens the alliance. It just puts all of our allies on edge. And then he says, by restoring peace to Europe. Well, he didn't say countering Russia. so he's not going to counter Russia. He's going to give in. That's exactly what this reports. I just had a conversation via Zoom with some of my father's high school classmates, class of 1950. These are very experienced people. And I said, you know, I am going to vote for Harris. And they're both conservatives, even though one is still nominally a Democrat. And the Democrat was saying, how can you do that? You don't know what Trump's going to do. This platform, not countering Russia, but calling for peace in Europe, combined with this, which is letting Putin keep his military conquests by killing civilians and crossing a border, is the evidence that is sufficient to judge what Trump is going to do. I say respectfully to my dad's high school classmate. This is evidence enough that we do not take the risk that Trump will magically somehow get a backbone as regards foreign tyrants. Now, the next thing, chapter 2, seal the border, secure the border. And he says they're going to secure the southern border. I want that. I admire that. It's not something that we look like we're going to get from Harris. But then he says, before we defend the borders of foreign countries, we must first secure the border of our country. That is a terrible and impossible policy. What it has to be is, as we defend the borders of foreign country allies, we must also secure our southern border. Mr. Trump said that he would secure our southern border by making Mexico pay for a wall to keep Mexican people inside Mexico. Basically, he said, pay to build a jail to hold your own people. Now, America and the principles of democracy have always been against that. You know what that was? That was the Berlin Wall. The East Germans built that to keep their own people in. We have always denounced that. If we want to keep our border secure, which we should, it is our duty to pay for it ourselves and not try to turn a neighboring country into a prisoner of its own people. It violates the fundamental principle of human dignity that we have always stood for, which is freedom to leave a tyrannical country that you currently live in. You don't become property of the state. The state does not get to build a wall to keep you in. Now, every state has the right to build a wall to keep people out. And it's our duty to do that without dreaming up this businessman scam of his that he will do a deal and make the other side pay the cost of it. Maybe you can do that kind of thing in deals. When I was representing Robert Bass and David Bonderman taking over American Savings Bank from the United States government, which had come close to seizing it, a great point of pride by the Bonderman and Bass people, as expressed to me by Robert Barnum, who they hired to run the new bank, was that the people that we had bought the bank from also were obligated to pay a great deal of money towards our successful operating of the bank. He said, what a clever deal. Well, in the business world, you do try to do that because there are no moral implications to that. You're just two business entities trying to work out a good deal for yourselves. But in the political, governmental world, there are moral implications. The profound defect of Mr. Trump is he has only lived in the business world where you just accept whoever is the leader of the other company without challenging the validity and morality of how they got to be the chief executive officer. You want to buy a company, you deal with the current CEO. And you don't say, oh, well, you became CEO by an illegitimate process, so I won't deal with you. But in government policy, government relations, between powers that have militaries, you do care how they got power. Vladimir Putin violated the constitutional term limits restrictions through a rigged election so that he can be president forever. That alone disqualifies him from us dealing with him. Xi of China did exactly the same thing. They both entered into the initially positions of the president under term limits. And then they used their powers to get rid of the term limits so that they could be president forever. We denounce that. Mr. Trump has no problem with that. It is just extraordinary. When you see that a foreign leader has done that, you don't deal with the person. You know who else did that? Hitler. You know who else did that? Mussolini. You know who else did that? Stalin. They all got their positions for life and kept them forever. And Mr. Trump doesn't even conceive that there could possibly be a problem with that. You don't deal with such people because they don't keep their deals. As I said in the last video, Mr. Trump is not the Hitler in this situation. He's the Neville Chamberlain. And with dictators like Hitler, you can get a great deal. They'll sign anything. It'll look wonderful. They won't keep it. And that's the case here. So in terms of deciding whether to vote for Harris or for Trump, this is the issue that matters. Conservatives, myself, have a great many issues with Ms. Harris's apparent advocacy of extreme liberal, the latest activist policies. We can continue to oppose those effectively, even if she becomes president, and because it is an entirely internal American affair. But when you feed the dictators, just like the old saying, don't feed the trolls, back when the internet was, the blogs were developing, the saying was, don't feed the trolls. Well, the saying now is, don't feed the dictators, because you just get more of them, and they just keep taking more and more and more. So this is why I say, vote Harris to keep America great. I am the person who wrote the book on that, America the Great, which Mr. Trump never contacted me about. And I'm telling you, this is the position anyone who wants America to remain great, to keep great, has to take. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, who is this guy Sisson who's talking to me right now? Well, let me show you. I'll have to get up because I'm still here just by myself and carry the camera around. Oh, and I have to flip the viewer so I can see from behind. All right, check this out. This wall is, aside from George Washington over there, these are my direct ancestors. Over on the right, my grandfather, Thomas Upton Sisson II. In the middle, my great-great-grandfather, Francis Winslow I. And then, in the nice striped uniform, Daniel Todd Patterson, who's, I don't remember how many greats he is, but he was a hero of the Battle of New Orleans. He commanded the USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, and 3 Navy destroyers have been named after him, including the latest, the destroyer Patterson, and I was at the commissioning of that destroyer, and my Aunt Laura Winslow, who we call Fady, was the sponsor of that. And so now, the rest of this, these are presidential signatures. Oh, and that's my dad with the red border. There is a portrait of him, but it's very big and it's very unflattering, and this photograph is a lot better. Let's get up close. This is the presidential signature wall, and there are a lot of original presidential signatures, every single one of them, of my direct ancestors, and every single one never out of the family possession. The only people that touched these were the presidents who signed them, the staff people who delivered them, and my direct family. So the most famous, we will go right to here. That's Abraham Lincoln. This is a commission to Francis Winslow I, who is this gentleman right here. A portrait I grew up with. It was on the wall of my grandmother's house since 1955 when I was born until 2015 when we sold the house, and I kept the portrait. Then we have Ulysses S. Grant. This is a commission for the son of this Francis Winslow I, Francis Winslow II. I don't have a portrait of him, but I do have his Naval Academy graduation diploma. 1875 or 1876. Then, let's go back in time. Here is James Madison. This is, in this generation, my ancestor was a woman, so she wasn't eligible to be a military officer, but her brother, William Worthington, was. And that's James Madison's signature on his commission in 1814 to the D.C. militia, right here in the city where I am now and when I was born. And after the British had taken the city and then abandoned it. And over here, signing as the Secretary of State, is another president, James Monroe, who followed Madison. So there are two presidential signatures on that one document. James Madison was the primary author of the U.S. Constitution. And I've got the U.S. Constitution right over here. There it is. And I always put these globes up because it keeps me focused on global thinking and the issues that face all of us in the world. So you'll see those a lot around wherever I am. Then, another original presidential signature, Andrew Jackson, a great favorite of us conservatives. And this one is let's see, what's the name on there? Francis Winslow, a midshipman. That's him, right there. His commission by Andrew Jackson. So then, after Grant, now we get James Garfield, also an original signature. And this one is Francis Winslow II, the son of the one in the portrait. And then, in terms of original signatures, we come on down. Oh, I skipped over one of the most unknown ones. This is John Tyler. Yeah, there he is. And I've got two of them. Here we go. And here's another one. Those again are Francis Winslow I. And he was vice president to William Henry Harrison. Harrison gave a tremendously long inaugural address, got sick from it, and died after 30 days. Now down here, and so Tyler became vice president. He achieved no political support, did not run for president. Later, advocated and joined the Confederacy. So I can see why various ancestors, as they were filtering through these documents, were happy to leave behind any of the John Tylers. Now over here, we have William Howard Taft. He came after Teddy Roosevelt and before Woodrow Wilson. This is for one of my father's ancestors, John T. Nance, in the Army. And here is John T. Nance's West Point graduation certificate. So we have the Naval Academy for Francis Winslow II and John Torrance Nance, the West Point. Now, in terms of signatures that I only have in photocopy, let's start out here with George Washington. After Washington was general and won the Revolution, but before the Constitutional Convention and adoption of the Federal Constitution, he wrote a very nice letter of recommendation to one of my direct ancestors, William Booth, who was a local, there's his name, W. Booth. He was a plantation owner in Northern Virginia, just like Washington was. This is a photocopy of his letterbook copy. And right there you see George Washington. So that's a signature of a future president directly relating to one of my direct ancestors. Now over here, we have John Stark, Revolutionary War general out of New Hampshire. And I believe I talked about him in my earlier video, and I regret all these reflections I'm getting. Down here, just below it, is his commission as a brigadier general in the Continental Army. You'll see it is October 4, 1777, making him a brigadier general, and it's signed by John Hancock. So the person now talking to you is a direct descendant of someone who got a military commission from John Hancock. Now over here, we have Thomas Jefferson. This is his check paying Dr. Charles Worthington for medical services in 1809. And I'm a direct descendant of Dr. Worthington. Now, this is a photocopy. The document itself is on the rare book market, and I think rare document market, and I think the last time it sold was maybe $15,000. Let's see what else we've got. Here under President Grant, I have some photocopies of invitations to the White House and also invitations from General Sherman to the marriage of his daughter. Over here, we have a photocopy. The original I have seen and have touched because it's in the Library of Congress Manuscript Division. That's Teddy Roosevelt. Now this is my great-grandmother seeking a Naval Academy appointment for her oldest son, Carlisle Winslow. And Teddy Roosevelt saying, happy to do it. And unfortunately, that son was extremely small. He didn't pass the physical. Instead, he went to Yale, and he was actually the coxswain on the Yale crew team, class of 1905. So she tried again for her second son, who's my grandfather, Francis Winslow. And here's President Taft signing it. We already have an original Taft signature, but and he didn't get appointed either because he was colorblind. And so instead, when World War I happened, he volunteered for the engineers. He went to Yale. He got a degree in mining engineering. And I'm losing my breath a little bit here. This is his appointment. It is not signed by a president. If it had been, it would have been Woodrow Wilson. And then over here, it's a nice little treat. This is not the president, but Jackie Kennedy. This original is in the Library of Congress Manuscript Division, and it is thanking my great-aunt Harriet for a gift of chairs that were owned by General Stark over here. Now, we made another gift to the White House, and those were fireplace mantles. But first, I will show you many of my ancestors have been invited to the White House for various social occasions. Over here, this is my Aunt Laura, whom we call Fady, invited to the White House because she was the sponsor of the destroyer Patterson. And we have these. This is my grandfather, Thomas Upton Sisson II, being invited to meet President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Eleanor Roosevelt. That person is the one there with the white hat. And then there are many other invitations to White House events. And then over here, to touch on the other gift, the fireplace mantles. These were in our old family mansion known as Brentwood, and here is a original watercolor painting of the mansion. It's currently demolished. It's over where the Park Service utility buildings are off New York Avenue. And so my grandmother, Mrs. Frances Winslow, Grandma Brinny, she offered them to the White House when she was selling another mansion that the family had, and the White House accepted. That was under President Johnson. So Mrs. Johnson invited her to the mansion because of the donation. Here are the mantelpieces themselves as they were installed in our building. And then they actually were installed in the White House in the next administration of Nixon. And here's the invitation from Mrs. Nixon. And the newspaper articles explain that the two fireplace mantles were put into different rooms in the family quarters of the White House. So when I vote for a president, I'm also voting for which family is going to get to warm itself in the winter before my family's mantelpieces in the White House. So let me reattach this camera. So that's my father and mother just before they got married. I've got lots of family documents up here. I've had a lot of fun covering the walls here with all sorts of things. Oh, let me cover my dad, for that matter. My father was a nuclear submarine commander. Here he is. He was also U.S. naval attaché to France, and here he is getting a medal from the French government. Here he is commander of his crew, the Grant submarine, and this is when he took command of it. I sailed on a dependence crew on the Grant and walked right next to the active nuclear missiles. I will show you that. Here it is. There's other documents too, but to all sailors, wherever you may be, Edward Sisson, honorary member of the ship's company, USS U.S. Grant, 25 August 69, signed by my own dad, T.U. Sisson Jr. I walked among the missile tubes filled with active warhead nuclear missiles. I have been thinking about these very serious issues of not just American governments, but safe and sound government in the world for many, many years. I was 14 years old when I did that. And I bring to you that experience in that judgment when I say that considering the issues in the world, the importance of promoting democracy around the world, the vital importance of maintaining the respect and influence of the United States of America in the world, vote Harris to keep America great. That's the reality. Thank you for listening. Oh, I should have mentioned, nobody got in touch with me after my last video. Nobody's offered me any inducements. Nobody's tried to entice me into anything. This conclusion is my genuine, sincere conclusion after considering all the issues that I discussed in my earlier video. Not influenced by anybody offering money, position, power, or anything else. Thank you. Goodbye.